So last week we covered area, and it's not called perimeter. What's it called on a circle? Circumference. It means the same thing. It's the distance. If you think about, like, if you had a circular pool and you were going to walk around the pool, okay, that's the circumference of the circle. For some reason, circle has a special name for its distance around. It's called circumference. On triangles and rectangles and shapes like that, it's called perimeter, but it's basically the same thing. Think about a football field, right? If I told you to walk around a football field, you would walk the edge, the end zone, the other side line, then the end zone. You would walk the perimeter, okay? So today we're moving from circles. We're moving on to triangle and let's see. What is it? A parallelogram? Is that the kind of the generic name for every four-sided? Is it parallelogram? That's what I thought. It's been a while since I've done geometry. So And so basically with these, we're just going to really be talking about like rectangles and squares. We're not going to get in any of the crazy shapes. But you can do that later on in geometry. We're just kind of doing the basics, setting the foundation kind of thing. All right, so formulas that you need. So first off, and this is first we're going to do area and perimeter of each. Okay, so I think I'll set it up like this. I think I'll do area and I'll do perimeter. And then I'll start with triangle. So we'll make kind of like a little table out of it. Okay, so for area of a triangle, there's a couple of different kind of triangles that you have. Okay, we are not going to get into isosceles and equilateral. Okay, that again, that's for geometry. Well, you can do that next year. We are only going to talk about, for triangles, we're going to talk about right triangles and what's called a common triangle. And a common triangle, basically, it's not a I don't know, it's not an isosceles. There's nothing special about it, right? Obviously, if you think common, there's nothing special about it. So it's not isosceles. Isosceles means what? Two angles match and two side lengths are the same. I think that's isosceles. Equilateral, all three sides are equal. All three angles are equal. We're not going to mess with those, okay? So the area of that is 1/2, I should say A equals, right? A equals 1/2 base times height. And the other way you might see this written, and especially with a right triangle, and I'll show you why here in a minute, but for a right triangle, you might see it written area equals A times B, and I'll show you why, okay? And then for the perimeter, you just simply add up A plus B plus C, and you're just going to name your sides A plus B plus C, okay? For the next one, we're going to have is area of a parallelogram, and I'm going to abbreviate here. So area of a parallelogram is really nice because it's simply base times height. Well, let's not do base times height. Sorry. It's the same thing, but usually it's called length times width. Oh my goodness. It's a Monday, what'd I tell you? Length times width. It's basically the same thing. It's the base, it's the height, but typically on a parallelogram, you see length and width more than you see base and height. Usually base and height is just terminology-wise used more with triangles, okay? Means the same thing. Perimeter is just adding up, right? Perimeter is, and I'm just going to put S for side, side plus side plus side plus side. And that looks a little different in, so if you think about a square, what is unique? And I'm still talking about the perimeter here. What is unique about a square? About all the side lengths of a square? Yeah, they're all the same. So for perimeter, right, instead of saying side plus side plus side plus side, if it's a square, you could say perimeter equals 4 times side. And you're going to get the same answer either way. It's just whatever way is easiest for you to think about it. Okay? And for a rectangle, good. Or, and you can even kind of simplify it a little bit more, is you can do 2 times the length plus the width. Same thing. 2L plus 2W, right? That's another way to do it. Like what Corbin just said, 2L plus 2W. Because if you think about a rectangle, there's 2 lengths and there's 2 widths. So if you add them up, I don't care for rectangle, right? This one right here is kind of the most basic way to think about it. It works for every single one of them. If you just want one to think about, use that one. If you want to get fancy and you want to do square is a 4S, right? 4 times S. Rectangle could be done a couple of different ways. You don't have to get fancy with it though, okay? Those are really the only 2 that we're going to deal with a lot in here. And then, like I said, when you move on to geometry, there's more, I don't know, they get a little more complicated as far as isosceles and equilateral triangles. The formula gets a little bit weirder. The other thing you're going to see on here, and it doesn't change how you do it, but it just looks a little different, is if you have, right, and it is still so parallelogram, you can have a square, and my shapes are going to be horrendous here. You can have a square, you can have a rectangle, and again with a square, right, length times width. With a rectangle, length times width. Okay. The other one you're going to see is yeah, you got one of these on here. Yep. They look like this, but it's basically if you just took a square and you slit it, like slanted it, it doesn't change anything, right? So this is known as a rhombus, I think. You're on it. Okay, it doesn't change anything. So in a rhombus, they're going to do something and it's going to look a little bit like this. They'll use a different color, and on your worksheets are not in color. So on your worksheets, it'll give you something like this. Like it'll tell you like this, and it'll tell you the height, right? So you would think about it if you had a box and you like slid it this way. This is just telling you if you slid it back up and made it a nice straight up and down square, it tells you the height or the width, right? It gives you one of the, so it's going to give you a number here, like say 4, right? And then it's going to give you a number here that's 7. And what that 7 is telling you is if you were to straighten this square up like this and then go this way with it, this would be a 7. Okay, so if you see a kind of, and it'll say H, and then it'll tell you what the H is. And sometimes it'll, on a rhombus, it'll call one of these sides an A. So it'll give you, like it'll tell you down here, it'll say A equals 4, but then it'll tell you that this is A. Don't worry about what they call the sides, right? You could call that side Fred and then say Fred equals 4. As long as you know that that's the base or that's the height or width or whatever, you can plug it into the equation wherever you want to. And then it'll tell you something like H equals 7, and then it'll tell you that the height is there, okay? So just kind of look at the worksheet that I'm giving you. Look at it, and it'll tell you size S. It'll label like squares, it'll say S instead of L and W, right? It'll call it an S, and it just means side and side. So don't worry about what it calls it. Just know where you need to put the numbers. Now on your worksheet, and I'm saying this for the people at home, when you guys get your papers in your hands, I'll tell you. But on your worksheet, number 4 is a, where's it at? Trapezoid. Skip it. We're not doing trapezoids. If it's a rectangle, a parallelogram, a square, a rhombus, you can do that, okay? Number 4 and number 8, I'm saying this for the people at home. Number 4 and number 8 on the perimeter of a quadrilateral worksheet, put an X through it. You don't do number 4 and you don't do number 8 because we're not covering trapezoids. And then when we get to the triangle worksheet here in a minute, number 2, 3, and 9. You're not going to do those on the worksheet because they are equilateral or isosceles. Okay, so you're only going to do the ones that are common or right triangles. So only do the ones you have formulas for. Okay, and I'll go over that again with you guys in class and let you know which ones to put an X through. All right, so those are the formulas that you're going to need. It's pretty straightforward. For those of you at home, this is a 2-day assignment. So the worksheet that you click and load in Kami is going to have a front and a back. The front is triangles. Again, on the triangle one, don't do number 2, 3, or 9. On the back side, that is your quadrilateral side, and you are not going to do number 4 or number 8. Okay, so email me if you have any questions for those of you at home. And then on Wednesday, there will be some Khan Academies to do. And then Thursday, we will move on to something different. Okay, email me if you have any questions.